believe we have a presentation by Fang, President of Radio Free Asia. So we're going to start with the 5-minute presentation, then we'll go into the discussions.
Okay, this is on. Wonderful. So, yeah, I wanted to, it's really nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And 5 minutes, I will try to make it quick. So I wanted to introduce you guys to what Radio Free Asia is and what we do. My background is very different from the others. I'm not a technologist, but I'm the president of Radio Free Asia. We broadcast to countries in Asia that don't have free press. And our mission is to actually be a surrogate broadcaster. So in countries where news is censored, we provide the sort of domestic news that people in those countries would be getting if it weren't censored. So if you on the map, our coverage area, we broadcast in Mandarin, Cantonese, Tibetan, and we have the world's only Uyghur service. And we broadcast into China, and then we broadcast into North Korea in Korean, and then in Southeast Asia, we broadcast in Burmese, Cambodian, Laotian, and Vietnamese. And then we more recently started a unit called Binar News, where we broadcast to the Philippines, to Thailand, Malaysia. We broadcast in Bengali, and then also in the Pacific Islands. And you know, the idea is that we are funded by the U.S. government, but we are completely editorially independent. And the idea is that we're not broadcasting propaganda from the U.S. We want to maintain the trust of being a completely of being a trusted news media in these different countries. So what we do, because we don't have people on the ground in the countries that we cover, it's called exile journalism. And so, for example, our Uyghur correspondents in the U.S., they stay up all night. Is my microphone okay? Okay. They stay up all night. One of them calls, hundreds of police stations, but has like very good contacts at this point, and is very well sourced. And so increasingly, we have found that news organizations are coming to us for information about how to do this kind of exile journalism. And sorry, let me go to the next one. So, for example, we broke the news of the historic anti-lockdown white paper protests in China half a day before any of the other media did, and that was from our work looking at Chinese social media. And what we would do is take the posts from Chinese social media, take it out before it was censored, and then put it on Twitter or X, and influencers would be the ones to increase the reach of it, and that's how people actually got the news about it. And so one of the things that I think is very important in the future of news, especially because Reporters Without Borders, in their most recent Press Freedom Index, has said that governments are increasingly cracking down on press freedom. So it's very important to be able to do this kind of work covering countries that are increasingly closed and off limits to press. And one of the things that we created also a year or so ago is the Asia Fact Check Lab, based both in Asia and in the US. And that takes basically, they're starting in Mandarin, and they're taking social media posts and dissecting them. So things that are disinformation that are being propagated and spread around Mandarin social media, they will take them, and with AI, it's more and more important to have this kind of capability. So for example, there were the Maui wildfires last year, and there was something going around Mandarin social media saying that they were actually created by, that they weren't wildfires at all, that it was because of a US weapons test. So our Asia Fact Check Lab looked at this and broke it down and actually did a reverse image search and found that the videos that were being circulated were actually taken from a windstorm in a town in Louisiana in 2018. So it's this kind of work that I think is increasingly important, both pushing back immediately on social media and on disinformation in social media. And then also, I agree with what people have said in the past about investigative journalism. I think basically going deep and going quickly.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a presentation from Zhang Shilei, Director of CGTN Digital. Hi. First of all, good afternoon, and thanks for ABU News Committee inviting me, and thanks Thai PBS for this nice trip, and thanks Deborah and Clare giving me this time to have this excellent panel together, and we're talking about the future of news. I was very much inspired by this morning about the panel's speakers, and so I tried to contribute to, so I did this slideshow by the noon for 20 pages, but I try to wrap up into 3 minutes. First of all, I wanted to show you that CGTN's application to AI. We see AI as a tool of revolution rather than a revolution of tool. So first, allow me to play video clips that we did with the, yes. Can we play?
Once upon a time, people in Chentangwan City lived in peace and happiness. Commander Li Jing of the Chentangwan City and his 7-year-old son, Ne Jia, guarded the place. But the Dragon King of the East Sea and his sons ruled over Chentangwan.
AI processed video called The Rebirth of the Young Hironaka. This month, we're targeting the young people worldwide because they are interested in a lot of Chinese legendary stories. But we believe that we can only use AI for this legendary storytelling, not for the news telling. And this one is we made in 7 days instead of if you do animation works instead of 3 months previously if we do this production. So
in a fierce battle.
CGTN Digital, we started 12 years ago. We cope with the trend of changing media consumptions that you can see on this slideshow, that people's consumption of the media starting from 45 minutes to 4 hours on the mobile side. And we just randomly cope up with that development when CGTN Digital started 12 years ago. And now we have approximately 380 million users worldwide that follow our integrated media organization, our brand. And then we examine the whole landscape, both in America and also in China, that we approximated the same, that you can see that we have these text applications and video applications and also other applications as well. And you know that how many months to reach 100 million monthly active users for all those applications, but for ChatGPT only takes 2 months. That's where user goes. And then ChatGPT, they go with a lot of services that for travel, for online shopping, for everything besides news.
And this is AP when they started 2018, and the use of these AI tools to examine, to produce news. And this is, we call it traditional AI using in the news arena. So, and also Washington Post use AI news test on their website. And BBC use AI assistant Beep to interact with their users online. And CGTN used Ask Panda chatbot in 2021.
Economic news.
And we believe that AI plus strategy should be AI plus good for the people. And also, we did. We examined the in the market that like Snapchat, they use this My AI tools to open to all. They targeted young people as well globally.
Service that allows subscribers to access new features firsthand. If you're interested in getting
So
My
I
AI on your
recommended this
just follow the
Snapchat.
tag or
And also, this is the world's first AI news website called NewsGPT. And they grab all the headline news from different news sources and to make it look like a very much news website, which you have to verify.
Right.
And I'll show you another clips.
Who am I? Throughout history, humans have never stopped exploring the dissemination of information. Text, sound, images, videos. But I'm not just that. Overthrow traditional thinking revolution. Intelligent full process. Ushering in a new
Yes, I
era of
think we're going to move
information
on
dissemination.
to the discussion
I am
from
IHUB.
this point.
Yes. So my time's up. I can hold any questions you ask. Yeah.
Sure. So basically, new technologies are one of the most tangible and measurable areas that we are noticing in the news industry as well. So I'm going to direct my first question to Fang. What are the lessons that we have learned from the past that will help us navigate the future in terms of news?
So I think the lessons from the past are the importance of maintaining authenticity in our reporting, even with the advent of all of these different voices and all of these different social media platforms. So I think it is still important to have people on the ground and people able to reach the real news that is happening in a city, in a village. Anywhere around the world. So I think that is one thing. And maintaining editorial standards in all of this. So that's why I say that the future is in pushing back on disinformation both quickly and deeply. So I think there is still very much a role for investigative journalism, but in a way that actually reaches audiences that people are interested in watching. I think some of the other presenters showed that very clearly.
Yes, and as Zhang has pointed out, that AI is playing a very emerging prominent role in creating content nowadays. So I'm going to ask Assel, from your perspective, how can we upskill journalists, and what needs to be done for us in order to be able to improve the quality of our work, as well as familiarizing ourselves with new technologies like Panda chatbots and generative AI 3D content videos?
Thanks, Claire, for the question. So those of you who will come to my workshop, all the secrets will be tomorrow morning, 9 to 12. But I'll probably say something which is my own views and analysis over the years. And by the way, I'm very recent in technology also. I'm like 3 years in technology and currently having my own startup. So really looking into upskilling and reskilling, right? We need to take a very thorough, candid check on ourselves as individuals, where we stand and where we want to go. And of course, after that, we need to look at ourselves as the organizations, right? And we need to have a very frank view of where we need to go. This is before we talk about strategy. This is before we talk about budgets and AI and everything else. So having internal perspective before you make any purchase, enable any technology. So technology is always a tool, is always the enabler, and it's never a replacement of a human skill, of human creativity, human expertise. So this is the view with which I work. And also probably another thing that is very important when we talk about future skills. You know, we always need to start with people. So people, processes, and only then technology, and never in the reverse way. And a lot of the people and sometimes organizations are actually starting in a different way and spend a lot of budgets and efforts and energy into making it work. So the digital transformation, in fact, is not only about digital, it's about people. And that's the hardest as well, because change management and for people to adapt to something new, to learn and to be motivated to keep up with the new technology is very, very important. And probably the third point and the last point I want to make, it's been an amazing day of discussions, and thank you so much for staying for the final session. And I want to echo to what some of the speakers said, that there is a content and there is a news, right? So right now we are living in the oversaturated market of content, which is thrown at us. And if we passively, I'm not from the news side, I'm not from the broadcasting side, so if I'm the user and I'm just passively receiving it, right, I will be in a very probably low mental state if I can't control my role and what I'm doing with the technology and the content that's thrown at me from all the channels, right? All the social media and other channels that I'm using. So what is our relationship with the content and technology is probably another question, and it's a tough question that we need to talk about. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Zhang, what's the audience response like with the content that you've just presented? I just wondering.
Well, we sent out all the different content. I myself was a journalist 20 years ago, and I started from zero to build up all these digital platforms. One of the lessons I learned from all the followers worldwide is that this is a diversity thirsty for the news production, for the content that we are building. And there's I would add to the trust, there is a respect for the diversities of religions, of our beliefs, of political arenas, of everything that I think for people out there. I once saw a survey run by Facebook said 70% of the young people on Facebook, they are longer to belong for the different variety of the culture of other culture, which is very surprisingly for our content creators. So I think for our, I'd rather say the news, because I've discussed this 5 years ago in the same, and then we talk with like BBC and CNN counterparts about how we're gonna do for the deep fake after the post news area. We all believe that people have this thirsty for information and have this thirsty for engagement with other people. So we did some valuable content. It's very much valued for most of the content creators, news organizations. Yes.
Right. Joe, so what is UNESCO's view on the impact of AI on newsroom and the future of journalism education?
Yeah, thank you. So the question is on journalism education. What I'd like to do, if there's time, is to talk about journalism education with AI as the backdrop, and then talk a bit about media viability with AI as well. I might not be able to do that. When you're the last speaker on the last panel, I think my main job is to just make sure you get to go home and and relax. And the other issue, of course, is that many panelists have said some of the things that I might repeat, and I have no way of really knowing that. So I'll be jumping around a little bit. I was going to speak about the positive theory of the case for AI in the newsrooms. I don't want to make light of it, but I'm going to skip over that. But I think I'll focus just on the sort of the content generation piece and its implications on journalism education and media development in the future. I mean, maybe others have mentioned this as well, but for instance, Bloomberg, their Cyborg app, generates about 1/3 of their news content. And Associated Press generates around 40,000 articles per year through artificial intelligence. And that's not trivial. And I'm sure other speakers have addressed these trends. But what I thought about, really is, I mean, this is a question more to you than, this is more like a conjecture, but somewhere in the middle, there's a bit of a hollowing out, in some of the key formative stages of the development of journalists. I mean, I know, we all went to school, or we managed with journalists who, started out for years doing metro or local news coverage, and that's the period really where you learn some investigation skills, the ethics of reporting, protecting your sources, but also just the writing, to the style of the news organization you work for, and that is your intellectual property. So all of those sort of skills that may have existed in the past. I mean, look, you don't become Maria Ressa or Seymour Hersh or Carl Bernstein overnight. You don't become a great investigative journalist or a great editor overnight. And so, how do we address that gap, sort of that formative gap along the development curve of journalists when, as I mentioned, a lot of those sort of routine news stories are being written by AI. Yeah. And I think journalism education for this generation will include a lot of these hands-on working AI tools. I mean, I think that applies even to the, across this region, even in the Pacific. It's said that a search in generative AI, like in ChatGPT, is 15 times more energy intensive than a Google search. I don't know if that's, there are various ways to estimate it. So that's, but it's the media, it's the internet platforms that are providing that service, and one way or the other. So these apps are available on the phone. I think, and I don't think it's an obvious point, but students should develop a sort of a competency and an agency, a sense of agency in relation to mastering and integrating AI newsroom tools. I mean, then that curricula needs to exist. And I was going to add a slide deck with all the QR codes of our journalism training products, including on AI and journalism. Maybe there's some other way to share that. But looking broadly ahead, sort of this learning and adaptive mindset to digital transformation, it's essential. It applies across every field of knowledge work. And journalists are ultimately knowledge workers. That's why this subject is so resonant in a way, these genuine risks of displacement that exist. And so, for instance, Assel's 3-hour masterclass tomorrow on generative AI, I find that incredibly exciting. I hope it's mainstreamed across this region. I wish all my staff could go, and I wish I could go if I had a free time. The other thing I wanted to point out with So if I can underscore just one point, I know I'm a bit jumping around here. This isn't journalism education per se, but it's that we need to go much further than debunking, checking. Debunking is like cooking someone a fish, for dinner. And I think media and information literacy, which is an area where UNESCO works, it's basically a digital skillings program based on critical thinking and a human rights-based approach. Assessing news through critical thinking and the human rights lens is like teaching how to fish, and I can't even believe I actually said that. But and the value proposition from the media side, I would say, is that it generates smarter and more loyal generations of readers to your brand. This human part of the news reporting equation really can't be replicated by technology. So, point being that while debunking and fact-checking is an important service, and it's maybe more than just cooking a fish for your friends, it's the broader package of assessing news bias and so forth is what we call media and information literacy. And we are working, that's why we are working with the Asian Broadcasting Union on the Media for Peace awards based on promoting media literacy, digital literacy, data literacy around subjects like the planet, like people, and like Earth. So we're very proud to be doing that. Another area that I think AI can be leveraged is, well, according to UNESCO, there's more than 7,000 languages in the world. About 3,000 of those are in Asia Pacific. Around 4,000 languages can be attached to a sort of a written form, and yet very few, the vast majority of these are facing extinction in this century. And one thing about AI technology, I mean, it's pretty good at translation. Like, I don't know if you know the case of Le Monde, but now they publish 40 news stories. What time am I at?
Yeah, we still have 10 minutes.
So Le Monde is publishing about 40 news stories a day in English, so 250 or so, more on Sundays. And they're doing this with less than 10 editors. What I read was around 7 editors whose function is to really check the quality of the writing and to align it to the style that is specifically Le Monde, which you may know, but you can guess. It really is their intellectual property. And in many ways, there's just no further excuse to silo your reporting, your news generation in one language. It can be, and I think what that points to as well is again, I mentioned indigenous and ethnic minority languages. I don't want to sound naive. It's not, it's harder to generate translated versions of these, but hiring bilingual editors who speak ethnic minority languages, there's a value proposition there. It can expand readership, it can improve the accuracy and the trustworthiness of your reporting, and again, you can reach wider audience even in mainstream languages with published in French and so forth.
Yeah, I've actually got a question. I'd like to steer the conversation towards ethical journalism, and I was wondering, what are the initiatives that are being taken, from all of your organizations in order to address that issue, in terms of when we have AI technology and algorithms as a key player now? What are the initiatives that are being taken in order to ensure ethical journalism?
I'll take the question. I think no matter how the news industry goes, and the core value is never changed, I would believe on balanced report, facts checking, and for the human goods, for the public goods. But on the other side, I think when there is regulations by the European Union, there is abandon from the Italy government to the ChatGPT, and we must respect all the, I think different countries have their different choices for the ethnic regulations on the news production based on their own situation of the country. But if we create something that can create value for I'd rather say our users instead of consumers. For the users, according to the demographics by the CGTN, we have this 18 to 34 age groups, and 90%, 70% of them are men worldwide. And we have this over from 180 countries, over 500 international talents working for CGTN, and we grab all the news. We actually sending out 400 pieces of news every day as an organization, news organization, including half and half, like 60% of it's a global news. And previously we shared the same goal as a Thai PPS. I talked with the Director General, and she said her ultimate goal, her ambition is to become a global brand for representing the voice of Thai, which is our ambition as well. But now we changed a little bit, is that we want to be supplying some public goods for in the information area that people can verify by their own judgment, that they can see that how China, how world goes another way around. But that's why our motto is called See the Difference with CGTN. So I think for the digital area, for the ethnic of news, that we respect the diversity and we long for the new, the real, I mean, the real truth of the news backwards.
Yeah. Right. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I agree that there are core journalism ethics that play into, like regardless of what all the tools are, you have to do rigorous checking of everything that every piece of news that you get. So at RFA, we actually get a lot of like videos from citizen journalists because we're known for being, the independent journalists in many of these countries that will, get the truth out and give people a voice. So for example, we actually were given a cell phone from that was just found on the street in Myanmar that was dropped by a Burmese soldier. And it had, it was like selfies of him with sort of mutilated bodies that, he had people that he had killed and videos. And we had to really check that, this was a real cell phone. We did data stamping and looking at where these were located and saw that there was actually a massacre in the village where, where the cell phone, where the person had taken these videos. So that kind of verification is something that will not change, but it gets increasingly difficult depending on all of these different methods of altering videos or images or whatever. I would say also, I think the idea of media literacy cannot be understated. I think it's so important. And I think that there is some responsibility that is not just among journalists themselves, but among social media companies. I think there should be more regulation. I think there should, social media companies should be actually taking down, images, videos, posts that are that have been proven to be disinformation. So that's what I.
Sure, Assel.
Yeah, as a non-expert, but again, sharing my personal view. Before we talk about the ethical journalism, I think we need to understand where AI ethics, bias, and governance, where it comes from the LLMs, right? Large language models. And I would agree exactly who's responsible for the LLMs. It's always who guards the guardians. This is like a rhetoric question. Is it the person who is training the models? Is it the person who is labeling data? Is it the software engineer? Who will be responsible when the data already out from the lab and reaches us, right? So the biggest problem right now, out of all the other problems we have in LLM development and bringing it to the market, is actually algorithmic bias. So the algorithms really represent how unfair our world is. So for example, if I tell you, I'm training people in Singapore and in Asia, so that's my major market. 12 months ago, I could, and disability inclusion and generally DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is a huge part of what I do. If 12 months ago I could tweak the way I train my machine, ChatGPT or Copilot or Google Gemini, whatever you're using, I could say, yes, this is the program I want to do, and please tweak it according to the participants that have, for example, dyslexia, right? And I have exact statistics of the participants from program to program that have certain needs. Usually it's special education needs. It would be tweaked in a way that I would say, oh, sorry, I'm not authorized to give you this data because I'm just a large language model. But in the beginning, if you used in the first 6 months, if you were the early adopter of the technology, it would give you a very different answer. It will be a very detailed answer. But because there was so many problems with the bias and discrimination, actually, if we say just openly, in the models itself. So of course, at the onset of it, algorithmic bias is where it is. A second thing, I think it's not really a journalistic issue, but I think the governments are working on that, companies are working, but this is something we're also working on, is something that to bring Western-centric LLMs and make our own Asian right here for the region. I can speak for Singapore because this is where I live. Singapore is working on the ASEAN version, which is called Sea Lion, and there is a separate government agency, IMDA, which is responsible on the accuracy of the, so it's AI verify. So how do you verify that the LLM is actually trustworthy, right?
Yeah, we're almost out of time. Is there anything that you would like to add in terms of the future? What's next?
I was just wondering, any of you consider of global digital governance, despite all the diversities and differences between the countries and between the ethnic group, between the news values, between the judgment, everything, but for our human beings, because once I hear an interview by a Fox News anchor to Musk and saying that it's the AI will ruin our human beings. And he said definitely the only thing we can do is unplug the cloud computing and then maybe save our human beings. So before we've been really, that's I think it's 90%, 99% possibility lies in the future. I mean, in 5 years' time, who knows?
Yeah. And Joe, lucky last, anything to add before we conclude?
Well, no. So I agree with everything that was said. I just want to quickly note, because UNESCO has developed the first international normative instrument for the ethics of AI, including how it impacts media. And last year, we worked with the social media companies and received also 10,000 contributions from non-social media companies from 134 countries to develop over 18 months our guidelines for social media. I wish I could get into that, but I won't. And then this question of algorithms, I just think it's a very important question existentially, and just understanding how to escape the dependence on algorithms should be a big part of the discussion, and probably it was, and I probably unfortunately missed it. But as you know, every single tweak to an algorithm can have an existential impact for news content providers. And news content providers, I mean, you feel you're earning your views because of the quality of your content, and it's true. It's true. But traffic is part of the traffic is because of the weight or bias of an algorithm. And why that matters in sort of this historical picture is because sort of in the Web 2.0 milieu, you know, as you know, social media captured ad revenue because they're really, really good at it. And sort of the sidebar of that is that it's going to be very difficult to compete against big technology, this type of oligopoly in terms of their access to data, their access to compute, and their access to programmers. But Yeah, okay. I'm just going to close this paragraph. What I would say is that, yeah, what happened very obviously is that companies like Meta suddenly pulled out their news feeds, and this has crushed a lot of companies. You know this. There are several reasons. I mean, from their perspective, several reasons, which is that countries were making legislation requiring you pay for news links, and at the same time, users of Instagram, Meta, were saying news feeds are polarizing. There's political polarization in them. So they said, okay, fine. That's what happened. An algorithm tweak, and suddenly the hose turned off for a lot of companies. And that's where we are now. And then you have Chat GPT, which provides this new revenue model that was unexpected, this sort of licensing of content. But it's a Faustian type of proposition in the sense that ChatGPT can easily jump paywalls and it's doing two things, but it's scraping all your intellectual property, and at the same time, it's producing content that's very, very similar. That's the challenge. So it's ultimately an algorithmic challenge.
I reckon we're all aware of the challenges now. The next question is basically, how are we going to address those challenges? As long as we're aware of it, I think, I don't know if you agree, the future is still within our hands.
Once I was asked by the former Minister of Thai PR, Public Relations Ministry, and she asked me, Sheila, how will you verify the news on this arena with all this AI technology booming up? I said, we counted on our journalists worldwide. As I said, CGTN has all this 500 journalists, and also we have this bonded relationship with Reuters, AP, AFP, and also over 1,000 prestigious news companies, media organizations together. So we actually, let me do a little bit of advisement. We welcome all the further bonded
with time, but
yeah, I know. Work with CGTN and CCTV, we welcome, we respect your diversity, and we welcome all the content that can pull into CGTN's website and our other platforms, including television, radio, everything. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to my panelists and to all the speakers today, and all of you for participating in today's Global News Forum. Thank you so much.